Thank you for joining us today. Our topic is Special Education Terminology, a guide to common acronyms and definitions. This presentation will take 15 to 20 minutes. At the end, you will receive a quiz on what you remember. Please make sure your desk is cleared, with the exception of a pencil and any forms passed out by the facilitators. No devices should be on during the presentation. Thank you again for your cooperation. Over 70 common acronyms are used in different fields concerning people with exceptional services. The top 5 we most commonly hear from education professionals are ARD, BIP, IEP, CPS, and LD. ARDs are meetings with parents, teachers, and specialists to discuss plans and current progress of the student in question. BIPs are behavior improvement plans for students that are struggling with emotional regulation in school. IEP is an individual education plan that must be followed by all members of faculty. Many people are familiar with CPS, Child Protective Services, who have the tough job of investigating undesirable behavior at home. Last, we have LD, Learning Disability, which is a general term for those having difficulty in academics. Why is all of this important? Well, 15% of students between the age 3 to 21 are covered under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act IDEA. Some of these disabilities include specific learning disabilities, autism spectrum disorder, intellectual disability, developmental delay, emotional disturbance, and many more. But special education is a much larger umbrella. 20% of students fall under special education, which includes bilingual education, gifted and talented education, and other non-cognitive or non-neurological disorders. Special education is for students with an exception to the general ability of a typical student. We will be focusing on neurological disorders today. I'd like to mention that I love kitties. I adore kitties. Who wants to say meow with me? Meow. Meow, meow. 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 Here are a few more common acronyms. AFDC, Aid to Family with Dependent Children. This is for low to no income families to receive federal and state assistance. Auditory Handicap Services, AH. These are services associated with deaf or hard of hearing students, like learning ASL. AIP, Academic Improvement Plan. This is a little self-explanatory, of course. It's a plan for students and facilitators to ensure academic performance growth. APE, Adaptive Physical Education. This is modified PE, physical education for those with disabilities. AYP, Annual Yearly Progress. This is a measure from the Nickleby, NCLB Act, Leave No Child Behind Act, that judges schools and academic performance through high-stakes testing. Did I mention that I like kitties? This kitty has had a rough day. Meow, meow. That's a mood. Meow, meow, meow. So how does this impact you? Well, 15% of people still have these disorders or deficits that were under protection through IDEA when they were young. After 21, the number of people with disorders and disabilities increase through drug use, vehicle accidents, work-life stress, and other things. You will have to work with them during your career. You will need to train them in the workplace. You will interact with them socially on a daily basis. The majority of the terminology is utilized in social work, health services, medical, human resources, and many other fields. Our hope is that when you hear conversations from professionals using these acronyms, you will not be lost. And then you can learn something important from that conversation. Okay, here's some more common acronyms. OI, orthopedically impaired, is a severe physical impairment that adversely affects a student's learning. RSP, the Resource Specialist Program. This is a program to help assist children with LDs. They receive smaller student-to-teacher ratios, so more one-on-one time can take place. 2E, twice exceptional. These are students who have learning issues and are in the gifted and talented program. For example, a good candidate would be a high-functioning autistic student. VI is visual impairment. Those are for people with low vision or blindness. They are taught Braille, how to properly use a cane, and independent life skills. And then finally, SPED, which is the acronym for special education, that nifty program that provides services for 1 in 5 students. I also really like puppies. Oh, look at this puppy. He's so sad and cold. I'm so worried. Whoa, whoa. Wow, wow, wow. Wow, wow.
Wow, wow.
Specific learning disabilities. These are learning disabilities based on neurological processing problems that interfere with basic learning. There's auditory processing disorder, language processing disorder, dyscalculia, that's difficulty in arithmetic, dysgraphia, problems in writing, dyslexia, problems in reading, and dyspraxia, that's a coordination disorder like having trouble with balancing or poor hand-eye coordination. Nonverbal disabilities, visual perceptual deficits, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, ADHD. Then there's executive functioning, cognitive management trouble with connecting past experiences with present experiences, which is key to assimilating new information. And then working memory and short-term memory deficits. Okay, now it's time for some more of your favorites, common acronyms. So we've already gone over ARD, Admission Review Dismissal Meeting. That's the meeting with the teachers and parents and specialists. The BIP, the Behavior Improvement Plan. IEP, Individual Education Plan. So we're going to go over ADA. That's the Americans with Disability Act. That's a big powerhouse to make sure that restaurants and businesses and schools are all compliant. And then there's the 504. That's the Section 504. It's a federal law protecting the rights of citizens with a disability. And they're a really big powerhouse in the education field. If 504 is breathing down your neck, then you're in real trouble. Autism, or the Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD, represents 2% of the total population. Autism has a large variability in symptoms, sensitivities, and medical disorders. There's not a one-size-fits-all program that caters to the entire ASD population. And remember, the acronym 2E means twice exceptional. It's very common to find children with ASD that are also in the GT program in their schools. For example, my son has Asperger's, and that makes it really hard for him to read verbal and nonverbal social cues from people, like if they're happy or sad or done listening to him talk. Yet he still has a huge social group and just won first place in an acting competition in state, which is pretty wild for a kid with ASD. Or maybe it's not that wild at all. Yo, bro, you just gotta chill out and take it nice and easy. So, dude, I'm just chilling here on this tree because I'm like a sloth, man. And we'll jump right back into it with common acronyms again. We have LEP, which is Limited English Proficiency. For example, if English Second Language, ESL student is learning English but not all the way there yet. LLD, Language Learning Disabilities. LRE, Least Restrictive Environment. This is a big thing when being in the inclusion program. We want to make sure that everyone is not coddled or their hand is held the entire time. We want them to be able to explore as far as they can with the least restriction possible. And then there's LSH, Language, Speech, Hearing, which is usually just written down in the R. It's like we need to test for language, speech, and hearing. And then MD for multiple disabilities. Intellectual disability, ID. Federal and state documentation still labels this as mental retardation or MR. It's changed several times throughout the decades. There used to be mentally handicapped, mentally disabled, mentally retarded. Now we're pushing for ID, so the paperwork is just catching up. And this is defined as having problems with reasoning, learning, and problem solving, with the key being problems with adaptive behavior. ID is determined through a complex process that includes the IQ test, which is a major tool. And if you get a score of 70 to 75, usually just 70 or below, it's a very strong indicator of intellectual functioning deficits. Now, adaptive behavior is tested by measuring conceptual, social, and practical skills. And some more common acronyms. CPS, which we've already gone over, is Child Protective Services, who have the tough job of going into homes that need a little bit of assistance. Then CP for cerebral palsy. A lot of times we think because of their physical attributes that their mental attributes should match, which is far from the truth. Many times people with CP have above average IQ. And then there's CTB for Competency Testing Battery, which is a series of tests to find out what you know and don't know. ESL, English as a Second Language, and that's not just for Spanish. That could be Chinese, Indian, Arabic, Russian, or whatever the case may be. Then DHH, which is Deaf and Hard of Hearing, which has a huge support community to help the school with ASL and English Sign Language. I do not like ostriches because ostriches are mean and scary and just very, very, very old dinosaurs. He looks like he wants to peck my eyes out because he's an ostrich, and ostriches are gobble, gobble, gobble scary. Emotional disturbance, or ED. Maybe when you were in high school, remember the one kid that flipped the desk in anger at the teacher because they lacked emotional regulation or emotional intelligence? Emotional disturbance will be diagnosed if you have one or more of the following factors. Number one, an inability to learn that cannot be explained by other things like intellectual, sensory, or health factors. Number two, inability to maintain desirable interpersonal relationships like making friends or long-term commitments. Number three, atypical behaviors or feelings under typical conditions. For example, something we thought would be really small, someone with ED would think it's a big deal. Number four, general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression. And number five, development of physical symptoms or fears associated with personal or school problems. Common acronyms. FAA, Functional Analysis Assessment. This is mandatory in some states when evaluating students in special education that exhibit behaviors that interfere with learning. FBA, Functional Behavioral Assessment. This is an assessment to find the why behind certain behaviors. If Carl gets upset every time there's a math test, then there's probably something deeper that's frustrating him. And then Gifted and Talented Education, GATE or GT. This is for the top 3% with an IQ of 130 or higher, even though most UT programs don't follow that standard. And then IFSP, that's Individual Family Service Plan. This is a special services for young children with developmental delays to get assistance at home. These interventions are usually established before preschool. And then finally, TEA, Texas Education Agency, which is obviously state specific and is a branch of the government that is responsible for regulating public education.
Wow, llama, llama, llama. Wow, llama. Do you like my haircut? I got a really nice perm. Wow.
But what does this all mean? There are so many different types of people out there. Everyone is truly a unique individual. No two people are the same. We try to categorize them into these boxes, yet those boxes seldom fit. We've created countless strategies and styles of instruction for people, yet we still have one heck of a hard time assisting everyone. Each one of these labels or acronyms are associated with different policies and procedures. It's a tough job trying to give everyone equal opportunity, but it is a job well worth doing. What we want you to remember is that everyone is unique, and you should treat everyone as a unique individual. Common acronyms: H, mildly handicapped; MM, mild to moderate handicap; MR, mental retardation; PI, physically impaired. These are old school terms that are no longer used by educators today, yet it's still in state and federal paperwork, so it's important to know these things. NCLB, or NCLB, No Child Left Behind, was put in place in 2001. In 2015, it was replaced with Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA. ESSA said that the states are now responsible for how much priority they want to give to standardized testing because the federal government is no longer going to expect academic growth from all schools every year because there's a lot of variables out there that standardized tests cannot measure. Even with the deregulation, Texas still prioritizes standardized testing. Thank you for joining us. Please stay seated as the facilitator raises the lights and begins passing out the quiz. It is 20 multiple choice questions over the content you were just presented. You will have 15 minutes to complete the quiz. After the minutes are completed, everyone is dismissed. Please do your best and good luck.